What's up, everybody? Time for one of those community discussion, sort of what's old is new videos. Let's talk about why button binding, macroing is cheating, why execution matters in games, and to throw a little bit more on it, let's talk about, just because I saw it talked about recently, let's talk about the difference between something being jank and something being, difficult. Sorry, I'm just saying. So, let's start off with this. Mom, don't be racist. They all use pink, Pikachu. Thank you. So, first of all, to be honest, before we could even start, if you have to button bind something, if you have to macro something, I think automatically you are already admitting that it is a skill, right? If it is not a skill, if pressing 3 buttons, 4 buttons, 2 buttons is no different than pressing 1 button, why do you have to use the macro or the button bind, whatever you want to call it in the first place, right? Is that not true? Boom. I think we could end the video right there, technically. But obviously it's a skill, right? There's a big difference between pressing 3 buttons and 1 button. There is no possible execution error of pressing 3 buttons versus 1 button, right? What is the execution error that is possible? It doesn't exist. So you've automatically proved that it's a skill, right? Even if we were to think about games like, say, Street Fighter 2 originally, you know what I mean? Especially when you have characters like, say, Balrog or something, where you have to hold down 3 buttons, it also becomes almost like physical ambidextrous sort of skillism. You know what I mean? It's actually almost like a physical skill at some point, right? But button binding was added to the pad player, right? Because we only had, if it was a Sega Genesis, we only had 3 buttons here, unless it was like they had like an arcade Sega Genesis controller or something like that. And if it was a Super Nintendo, we only had these 4 buttons. Now, obviously, for the pad player, button binding was a necessary evil, let's say, right? Because it's just not, it starts to become, it starts to become a little bit more, let's say, far-fetched, let's say, right? For the pad player. To hold down 3 buttons, to press 3 buttons, it's a little bit more, you're adding another kind of physical skill, a physical skill that, let's say, before was only applicable to maybe the Balrog holding down 3 buttons or something. Now it's becoming almost more of a physical skill even for the pad player, right? And I think people were like, okay, maybe for a pad player, we can see we're, throwing you a bone, right? When you think of button macroing, right? But as video games, as fighting games progressed, you sort of came to a crossroad. Illuminati, what is the Illuminati? The Illuminati is real. We came to a crossroad. Whatever, dude. We came to a crossroad eventually in fighting games, dude, right? That people actually started complaining that there were too many buttons, right? Too many buttons. So let's say that they're like, God, we got fucking 5 buttons, 6 buttons. Let's just take away 2 of these buttons. Just X'd out. Oh, Bob, don't X out the pink. I'm sorry. That's racist. Okay, we'll X out the purple. Thank you. You racist bigot. So we took away 2 buttons for fighting games. 6 buttons are too much, right? But inevitably, because we took away these 2 buttons, guess what? Now to do some of these techniques, right? Well, we have to have multiple button pressing moves, right? So the community complained that there's too many buttons. So we take away a couple of the buttons, but to keep the game, progressing, the idea of fighting games progressing, we need to find a way to still put in new different moves, new different mechanics, right? A game like Guilty Gear, we have FD, 2 buttons. A game like Guilty Gear, we have 3 buttons. I'm going to start drawing a pee-pee. Don't draw a pee-pee, Bob. I'm not drawing a pee-pee. Yes, you're purposely drawing a pee-pee. Sorry. Anyway, even instant kill is instant kill. Oh my God, instant kill is 4 buttons, right? Instant kill is 4 buttons in Guilty Gear, right? So what happened, right? So the community gets pissed off about that. And they're like, oh, fuck, we can't press all these 2 buttons. This is too hard for us. Even though if the game is only 4 buttons, generally, I would say realistically, the pad player should have nothing to complain about. All those Guilty Gear videos that I've done and God, playing in real matches, I got a pad over there. You know what I mean? I did all that stuff on a pad, right? No button binding, no macros. There's no, should I just grab the controller? Well, whatever. You get the idea. If I'm holding down 4 buttons, I can press it's not like I'm having to ambidextrous, press 4 buttons or something, or these 2 buttons there. There's only 4 buttons in the game, right? There's no reason that you need to button bind because it's not like a physical obstacle. Like if it was Street Fighter 6 or Street Fighter 6, Street Fighter 2 or something, trying to hold down 3 buttons like that, whatever. It's no longer a physical obstacle. You have no excuse. But what happened? What did the community do? They're like, hey, you know how we said there was too many buttons before? Can we add these 2 buttons back and let's have those maybe be a macro? But you just earlier complained that the game had too many buttons. Now you want to add these 2 buttons that you just took away to set them to a macro. Do you see we're getting to the point that this is just an excuse for your own lack of skill? Something that was done as a courtesy, the pad player, something that was done as a courtesy, has now become something that is exploitable. You cannot miss, even if it's 2 buttons, you cannot miss 2 buttons if it is 1 button. It will always occur. It is not possible to miss. There's no execution error there, right? And also there's hypocriticalness of you complaining that there's too many buttons, right? That nonsense. And people, I feel like they first really started complaining about this kind of stuff in a game like Marvel, actually, what we've done videos before, and it's because wave dashing, right? Wave dashing is such an integral part of Marvel vs. Capcom. If you can't miss wave dashing, right? You know what I mean? Well, guess what? That's a big advantage. This isn't something, and again, when we're talking about the courtesy to the pad player, the courtesy of the pad player, you think about Street Fighter, you only do, just say it again. You only do level 2 super so often. You only do a level 3 super so often, right? It's not something that is happening continuously in the match. So you can sort of, suspend disbelief, let's say, and be like, hey, this is fair for a pad player. You know what I mean? Like, it's okay. You're playing like a Street Fighter Alpha. Okay, you did a super. Okay, whatever. You know what I mean? That's not too bad. Again, the conundrum being a character like something like a Balrog, because this is such an inherent skill that you need to be able to do throughout the entire match, right? You get to a game like Marvel, like I said, well, this is not a once in a blue moon level 2 or level 3 super. You are constantly wave dashing throughout the match if you're trying to play it properly. We get to the game like Guilty Gear. This is not a once in a blue moon kind of thing, right? This is, constantly, well, we're always FD'ing, we're always RC'ing, we're always FRC'ing, right? It is an inherent skill to the game. It is an inherent skill to the game that you can no longer miss. Classic example of being Guilty Gear, how often, and I literally showed the forum post, oh, Clayton, the stuff he's doing is fake. Oh, and now the Kai impossible combo has almost become a meme that I'm the one that said it is impossible, when it's really just a jab that the community tried to say that it was impossible, that there's no way I could move my fingers that fast to do it. And I don't button bind or anything like that. No one had ever done it before, right? It was years before someone even did it in a combo video, when I was doing it in real matches, let alone a combo video, right? And now, of course, you have how much of Guilty Gear you see throughout the community is people saying, oh, I can prove, oh, Clayton makes a joke, it's impossible. It's not that hard. Well, they button bind and macro to do it. If I was button binding and macroing to do it, people would not have said I was cheating. I mean, return. The Karnov example that I've used before is there's a big example. A big difference between doing a 4-button, let's say again, Mizuguchi blue DP, you might not even do that every round, and doing a Zazzy 100-hand bitch slap, which let's compare. Mizuguchi, you might not do a single blue dragon punch an entire match. Zazzy might do bitch slap 20 times a round. It's not possible to miss. So you can see that execution is a skill. We can see the hypocriticalness of the community. Right? And to touch on the idea of also, let's just say, not totally focusing on button binding and macroing, but execution and moves being easier, the example that I've used before is something like Street Fighter 4, right? As moves get easier, commands get easier, that kind of thing. Think about a game like Street Fighter 4 compared to Street Fighter 2. We have that player that hates dragon punches, right? I hate dragon punches, blah, 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 in Street Fighter 2. They're too powerful. They have too much of an influence on the match. Now, this isn't that everything is acceptable, let's say, in a game like Street Fighter 2, because Street Fighter 2 having random times that you can like do a special move, like, I don't remember exactly what it is, it's like sometimes it varies so many frames for when you input the special move. The game might be a few more frames lenient than it always is, you know what I mean? Sometimes it varies, right? Like, obviously a random factor like that is unacceptable in any video game. That's retarded, right? But again, generally speaking, I think everyone would recognize that a game like Street Fighter 2 takes more execution, right, than a game like Street Fighter 4, right? However, if you think about a game like Street Fighter 4, look at how often people complained about dragon punches. And do you know why people complained about dragon punches so much, despite them not being as invincible as they were in Street Fighter 2? Because guess what? There was no longer execution. The light died. Whatever. The light died. we're in the dark here. The light died. Okay, am I still on? The execution was so much easier that it made it annoying, even though the move itself was not as strong. Is that another proof that execution matters? Now, someone might want to chime in here and be like, oh, well, that's because you could FDC it and you could make it safe sometimes, and then you could do a super. Well, we're getting into meter and we're getting into game systems and all that kind of stuff. But if we're just taking the base idea of the move, guess what? You get more just for me missing the dragon punch and you doing your punish combo because of health bars and how much, combos have been affecting the entire, ether of the game, so to speak, you know what I mean? Lost my train of thought there. The whole ether of the game, the spectrum, you know what I mean? You're going to get more damage just in a normal situation. Let's say for you guessing that I'm going to dragon punch and blocking it and then doing a punish combo than I'm going to get for just hitting the dragon punch. Even though, yes, we can admit that, yes, there are things in something like Street Fighter 4, like, FDC to make it safe, whatever. We're getting into all this sort of meter stuff, right? Blah, 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 right? So the point is what I'm getting at there, just to play that devil's advocate in case someone tried to argue that. Street Fighter 4 is another example of why execution matters, right? Because even in a game like Street Fighter 4, as quotation marks weak as a dragon punch is comparatively to a game like Street Fighter 2, well, guess what? When the execution is you cannot miss it, look how powerful it becomes, right? Execution matters, right? Whether people want to believe that that isn't true, it's ridiculous, right? And to talk about something like, again, execution getting easier and the difference between something like being difficult and jank, I think there's actually an argument that not every difficult execution game feels bad to play, right? Look at a game like Street Fighter 2, what we just said. Street Fighter 2 still feels good to play to this game, right? And I know feel can be kind of ambiguous, right? Because there's like the weight of your hit, kind of like the sound effects, right? So there's a lot that goes into it, right? But Street Fighter 2 generally doesn't feel bad to play. Guilty Gear, a game that, many people would say is a execution heavy game to certain degrees, even though it is a game that is many years past something like Street Fighter 2. I said before, I think Guilty Gear feels pretty good to play, generally speaking, right? I think maybe to a non-player, I might say that something like the fact, and because we talk about feel, right? And feel can be kind of ambiguous. when we talk about how a game feels to play, maybe when you're doing combos in the corner in Guilty Gear, and if you know in Guilty Gear, the longer a combo goes, when you're in the corner, you can sort of feel your character being pushed back, like literally. Like maybe that is something that doesn't feel natural, let's say, to try to describe how a game feels.
Gives you savings and rewards.
I was playing that song because that guy was asking me to play the song or whatever, right? But generally speaking, I think Guilty Gear feels pretty good to play, right? But if you think about some of these newer games, right, and some of these like looser execution games, and just going back to something like, again, I made these Marvel videos. Marvel 3 is so lax in the inputs at times, it feels a little jank to play, right? I mean, do you agree? There's some things that feel like, man, the game is so much easier to play, but when games are so lenient, it feels like it's buffering too much at times. Like it hasn't hit that sweet spot. Look at a game like Street Fighter 6. I made that one fucking video right when I first played the game. Do you see I was mashing buttons and I did this supposedly super hard combo? Do you remember that? There comes a point of no return when a game being so loose makes it feel kind of jank and not like legitimate. Like the game, it doesn't feel good, right? And and again, it's it's kind of a hard balance. I'm sure there's got to be like a sort of good middle ground, but that's why I say a game like Guilty Gear is a quotation marks newer game, let's say, if we're talking about the XX series, right? But Guilty Gear generally has a pretty good feel to it, right? A game like Strive, though, I think Strive feels heavy and weird. I don't think Strive actually feels that good to play when I've tried it before. And again, just to talk about how it can be kind of hard, look at a game like Marvel. Marvel has difficult things, but I think Marvel, you could almost say the game, almost Marvel 2, Marvel can feel jank because it just feels a little archaic, actually, right? Marvel 2 kind of feels a little bit archaic, I feel like, actually, when you try it, right? So again, feel can be kind of ambiguous, and I know I'm kind of picking and choosing here, but the fact that I can pick and choose shows that it's kind of, there has to be a sort of middle ground, right? Again, nothing should be random like Street Fighter 2. But the funny thing is, as random as Street Fighter 2 is, Street Fighter 2 still generally feels pretty good to play, despite execution requirements. Guilty Gear, despite execution requirements, feels generally pretty good to play. But then you got these other games that are so loose, and you're like, oh, they're so loose, they actually have kind of Ouroboros themselves and have started to feel jank in their own way, right? Anyway, I feel like the video's like some silly comment, share, support the channel. That one guy is always like complaining. I think he's posted on that one video. I think he's posted 5 times or something. He's like, Clayton, please talk to that one song again. So there you go. I talked to the one song again. The end.